Hello there, and welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm joined by Candace from the Geeky Waffle to celebrate Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith in honor of the film's 20th anniversary. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. All right, everybody, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. It is time to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, a film that is absolutely near and dear to my heart. And I cannot wait to kick off this conversation with Candace from the Geeky Waffle. First time on the podcast, and so thrilled to have her on to share her insights. And trust me, this is an episode that you do not want to miss. And this is also, what I will admit is our first in a series of episodes that we're doing in celebration of this movie. So we're going to be having a plethora of guests on over the next couple of weeks to share about their experiences with the film, talk about its themes in detail, and remember our first time watching it, think through the last 20 plus years. And I think it's going to be a really fruitful and rewarding conversation for everybody, as well as the listeners at home. It's going to be similar to how we did our Phantom Menace anniversary conversations. You may remember that last year around this time. And that's going to kind of be the format for this next couple of weeks here. So really excited for you to check out this episode, but also the ones in the near future here. Now, I will admit this episode was recorded in advance, and also this portion of the episode was recorded in advance. So there'll be no Cloud City gossip for this episode. Just, again, things I want to highlight. Our celebration is coming up around the corner, so get excited for that. Be on the lookout for our social channels for all the cool stuff that we're going to be doing in regards to celebration. I'm still not sure actually what we're going to be doing, but I'll figure it out in the near time and place when it comes to all this stuff here. So if you want to follow us and continue the conversation on social media, we're of course available on X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, and I think that is all the places. Just search for Force Ghost Conversations and you'll find us in some capacity. And on the other side of the short break, we'll be back with our episode with Candace celebrating Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Stay tuned. All right, everybody, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. It is celebration time here at the podcast. Not Star Wars celebration the way that you're thinking about it, but in celebrating the 20th anniversary. I can't even believe that I'm even saying that word right now. 20th anniversary of a little film called Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. And we are going all out here on the podcast over the next couple of weeks and months even, celebrating this film in great length and detail. And to kick off our celebration here, we have a first-time guest on the podcast. We have Candace from the Geeky Waffle here to chat all things Revenge of the Sith. Candace, welcome to the Force Ghost Conversations podcast, and how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. This is one of my favorite Star Wars films too, so I'm always jazzed to talk about this.
I love that you're jazzed to talk about this. And, I want to start our conversation by looking back and going back to 2005. So let's go with your journey here in 2005. What was it like in the months leading up to May 2005? What was your anticipation like for this climactic film, to say the least?
It was really interesting because we all knew Anakin's is gonna become Vader, and
Whoa, spoiler.
yeah, I know. Spoiler alert: Luke and Leia are gonna be born, but they're gonna be separated. We knew all these beats were gonna happen. We just didn't know how they were gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
So just getting really attached to these characters and watching Clone Wars, not the Clone Wars.
Right.
On
The Tartakovsky, yeah.
Yes, getting all hyped for that, and then watching the trailer as much as possible, and just hyping myself up.
Yeah. I mean, that was such a unique time because this, like you said, we were, I would say most people, there was probably a person that walked into the movie being like, I don't know what's going to happen here, and did no clue. I envy that person. That'd be such a wild experience. Yeah. I would love to know how they felt. And then maybe did they watch other films after that? I don't know. but to know that there was a clear ending to this, and an ending that's like in the middle too of the story, right? Like
Mhm.
it's like you're eating the like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they cut out like a piece of the middle, and you're like, okay, I just gotta fit that little juicy goodness part right back in the middle of this thing, so I have my full sandwich together. At the time, of course, we now have 7, 8, 9, and so many more ancillary things in the Star Wars galaxy. But yeah, I am in the same boat. I was 10 at this time, but that Tartakovsky Clone Wars series was my like revolution into Star Wars. Now I love Attack of the Clones, but just having that weekly Star Wars goodness on Cartoon Network every Friday night for like 2 years leading up to this, and just getting in like 5 minute installment chunks. I'd get a new episode. I'd call up my buddies and be like, "Hey, did you see what happened here? Kit Fisto, right, went underwater and was doing stuff. Like that's crazy. Plo Koon is out and about doing things. There's a whole space battle. Grievous, like all this was introduced to us via that thing, and that just continued to um, really just build up this anticipation. And I think for me too, I'm trying to remember how this is like, just going back to like kind of 2004 even too in this, because I think with the special edition DVD release, there was like a bonus disc that included some like behind the scenes information about Revenge of the Sith, and just like kind of giving some more information about it. Um, that was just I think for the fandom, especially if you weren't like really in tuned into the internet and the discourse of it at that time, this was a fruitful journey for everybody to just like live and geek out in this moment. It was just, again, I think it was a really special time, and I think it really helps that the internet was in its infancy. So if you were like 10, like I was, like I still had to ask parents permission before going online, as as, you, as was instructed. But with that being said, like, how did you first hear about the title Revenge of the Sith? What did you think of that title then, and how have your feelings perhaps changed in the interim?
I don't remember when I first heard it, but I do remember thinking because I was a giant Star Wars nerd then, and still am
And
now.
still are, it
But
sounds like,
like,
yes.
yeah, but yeah, I'm like I have a Star Wars podcast. I think that's like as big of a Star Wars nerd as you
Right.
can be, right? But I remember thinking, I'm like, oh, Return of the Jedi was originally Revenge of this
Mm,
Jedi, and they're using this, and I'm like, oh, it's so clever. Like George finally gets to use revenge in a title
yeah.
and things like that. So I was hyped for that, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be bad because I know a lot of Jedi's aren't gonna make it.
Yeah, you were like, oh, this doesn't bode well for our heroes that we've come to know and love over the last two episodes here. And then also, you're like, but I kind of have a sense of where they're going because of 4, 5, and 6, and there's really not a whole lot of Jedi around that time. When Yoda's like, when I'm gone, the last of the Jedi you will be, and that doesn't really, give a whole lot of opportunity for Kit Fisto to be around during this time frame, or Mace Windu,
Yeah,
or these other guys,
this is
and just
before Rebels and Cal Kestis and all
right.
those surprise Jedi. Which makes more sense. But like Yoda did no research, or Yoda was just being very dramatic and wanted Luke to work harder, and he's like, "No, you're the only one."
Yoda was a drama queen and still is, I think. Technically,
Yeah, he
Force
ran
ghosts are
a
still around, but like, dude just is like, good night, dies in his blanket.
like that's the whole thing is like everybody has to be like kind of like a chess game. It has to be set up. They have to be in their spots for A New Hope. So they're all
Yes.
like George is like, okay, this guy has to be on Tatooine. This guy has to be on Dagobah. And I'm like, Yoda just kind of like, okay, I give up. Peace out.
Honestly, in my recent rewatch with this here, I was like, Yoda kind of gives up against the Emperor. Like the Emperor is also like hanging by a thread. If Yoda could have
Yeah.
somehow figured out a way to climb back up those Senate, chairs, whatever you want to call them, the pods, to continue the fight, he just kind of like, oh, well, that didn't go as planned. Into exile I go. Goodbye.
Yeah. You're like, get some backup. There's that you tried once, Yoda, and you're
And
done.
that's it. He gave up.
He's like, fair's fair. Bye.
Obi-Wan's like, I will make sure Anakin is just about dead. In his mind, he is dead, right? Like he's like, how could anyone survive being burned alive? I'm not gonna give him the merciful death, but I'll just walk away and pretty much presume that it's over for him.
And grab his lightsaber. That's the
and take
other
his
thing. It's
lightsaber.
like
Love it.
because he has
Again,
to have the lightsaber. The
the
lightsaber
things
has
that
to be
George
on
was
that
like,
chess
I have to
piece.
make sure this is a part. Yep.
Yeah. So there's all these little pieces that are just like a little awkward, and you're just like, okay.
Awkward, yes, but like 20 years later, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. Give me that
It makes
stuff.
sense. Yeah.
Like, oh yes, the picking up of the lightsaber. Oh yes, yes. Good stuff. Also wearing the same robes that he'll wear in A New Hope too, like with all the tattered and all that stuff, and just being like, yep, he did not
Just
change.
just changing his first name also,
Yep, yep.
not his
That's it.
last name.
Yeah,
That's it.
there's enough Kenobis
Um,
out there.
Something I want to bring up. I'm curious about your point of view
Okay.
when you were a kid. Okay. Did you think Padme was going to die in the third movie?
So okay,
Because
go
I
ahead.
thought maybe she died off screen later on because Leia remembers her.
So this is a great question, and it goes into a big part of my Star Wars lore here, growing up. So around 2004, because of the special edition DVD release, um, the I watched Attack of the Clones 300 times the summer of 2003, and that's not a hyperbole. So I was knee deep in this. This was my very much my special interest when it came to things. Um, I went online, and again, this infancy of the internet, and decided I'm going to see if there is a version of the script out there for Revenge of the Sith. And I Googled Revenge of the Sith script, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and got a basically what was pretty much in 2005 the final draft script in 2004. Somehow I
Oh
don't remember
my
the full steps that I
goodness.
took to get there. I think it was like 7 pages deep and a couple links, but
I
eventually
thought
I
scoopers
found
were bad now.
exactly. I Someone just full dropped that, and of course there were things that were different in it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this, I think, at some point during our conversation here. But with George changing stuff, rewriting stuff the day of, and just constantly messing with the script in various ways. But most of the plot points and things that happened in that script that I read in just like my uncle's basement in 2004 was exactly how it played out in screen almost a year later, which I find utterly fascinating. Again, like you said, scoop culture is crazy now. Back then, woof. George needs to, sue somebody for that. His whole
Yeah.
IP
Somebody's
was out there.
NDA
Yeah, someone messed up. It
broke
was it
their
was bad.
NDA.
But yeah, I knew that Padme would pass, and generally how she would pass was very similar in that script. That was so there wasn't a whole lot. You talk about knowing kind of the beats that need to be hit in the movie, knowing where they end up in episode 4. I knew, all right, this scene's gonna happen, this scene's gonna happen, this scene's gonna happen, and then this scene's gonna happen. I knew Mace Windu was gonna get his hand cut off. I knew like the whole deliberation between Anakin and Palpatine, like the Plagueis scene, was written exactly as was in that, and I like, this is the
Wow.
most juicy scene ever. I can't wait to see it. But the thing is, like, knowing exactly didn't hamper my joy at all of the movie. It somehow made it better, and it's something that probably wouldn't happen today. Like if I knew an entire script of something heading into a movie, I think it would probably detract from my enjoyment, absolutely. But for some reason, this film just like captured both the childlike wonder and imagination that I had at the time, and the intrigue to want to look up the entirety of the script and know about it, and then to see it actually play out and like, okay, that was a little different, but this was executed perfectly, and I like the changes here. And it just worked out great. So yeah, that's that. So
That's very
long story
interesting.
short, I did know that Padme was going to die, and I did know that it was going to be of unknown circumstances at the time. So maybe that's why I'm partially more okay with how it passed, because how she passed in the film. I know that's a big like contentious point for people, and I'm sure I have some thoughts on that too. Um, but I had like the chance to grieve it almost a
You had a
year
year.
before, so like it wasn't so much a shock for me in what was it, May 10th, May 9th, 2005, versus a person watching it for the first time and then seeing how it played out.
Yeah. I remember the PlayStation 3 game came
Also
out
that,
like
yes.
a week before, and I had it. I saved like my
Love that game,
babysitting
love it.
allowance money, and I was like ready, and I had it. I did not unwrap it or anything like that, but I was like so tempted. But I was like, no, the movie's coming out soon. The movie's coming out soon. Because I remember being spoiled for Phantom Menace by getting the soundtrack
Oh, yep.
a few weeks early, and it's
Qui-Gon's
like
noble end.
Qui-Gon's funeral. And you're like, what?
You're like, whoopsie. Learn my
Yeah.
lesson here.
Yeah. My dad was trying to do a really nice thing. He's like, here, you're a Star Wars fan. Here's music. And I'm like, yay.
And then it turned out like, oh, I know what's going to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
I think this Qui-Gon guy might have a short lifespan in this
Yeah.
episode. But yeah, also the game was really excellent. I still play it to this
Oh,
day.
I
Really
love that you
difficult,
could
but
choose.
and then the
I
two
love that you
story
could
paths.
choose
Yeah,
at the end. Yeah, you're like, okay, well, actually, Anakin's gonna win Mustafar, and he's gonna be like, I'm Emperor.
and frankly, that's the only one I ever played because I'm a huge Anakin fan. Like that's my favorite character in all of Star Wars. So I was like, I'm glad that this version exists. I will. The galaxy is mine. I think he says, and at the end of
Yeah,
it,
something like that. Very dramatic, which
yep,
is Anakin.
which is totally exactly on point. Pure Anakin, especially Darth Vader Anakin, right? He goes
Yeah.
all in on it. He does not look back. He finally takes his mother's advice, don't look back. and he's full on leading the galaxy now. Oh, I wonder what that world would have looked like. An interesting what if for sure. So you got the video game, you decided not to play it. A week
Yeah.
later, the movie actually comes out. I think it's
Mhm.
I think I should have looked this up actually, but I think it's like May 9th, I think is the actual Friday of 2005 that it came out. So from your first viewing of the movie, what was that experience? You know, where did you see it? Did you see it with anybody? What were your initial reactions? Just take us back to that first viewing.
This was the first midnight showing it ever been to. It was
Ooh.
a school night,
Oh.
but I was a good student, and like most of the like big things were done.
Yeah,
And I think
it's
my
a Friday
parents.
in May. Like you can.
No, it was Thursday.
Well, Thursday night, right? Friday
Thursday
midnight.
night, yeah. Yeah. So it was like my parents were like, it's Star Wars and it's Candace. So I guess they're like, sure. So my friend and I went, my friend who I dragged to see Phantom Menace a second time,
Mm-hmm.
um, I took her, and I just remember, there were a few people dressed up, but there was a couple dressed up as Luke and Leia. And I'm just like, do they know?
Do they
They're
know?
going to find out in this movie.
They're gonna find some things out. Is that
Yeah.
baby born in this movie? I think they will.
Yeah, maybe it's not the best couple costume. Just say.
That's true. Oh my gosh! Wow, I didn't even. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I
Yeah.
didn't even think
Yeah.
that through. Oh my gosh. Ooh. Well,
Yeah. No, I remember
maybe it was
being
their
just like,
first viewing, and they just wanted to.
yeah.
They've never seen a Star Wars. They were waiting
Yeah.
to see Episode 3 and then watch the rest of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Surprise. Yeah, I just remember being like topped up on Mountain Dew, and as you
Hey-o.
can as a teen, just being like, okay, we're going.
Perfect plug.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's what I did for every like midnight book release and any movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was all the caffeine and joy and just, having a great time. Even
Yeah.
though it's like a very somber, sad movie, it was just so
It's really
much
dark.
fun. Yeah. But I loved Hayden, Ian, and Natalie. They're
Mhm.
just also fantastic. And yeah, all the feelings.
That's awesome. Would you say that
Yeah.
this is like this trilogy is your Star Wars?
I don't know. I was very like lucky. Like I saw the special editions in 1997
Mm.
in theaters because my dad's like, "Oh, these are these old movies I like," and I'm like, "Okay, fine, old man, we'll go." Like, I'll take a nap because I was like a kid. I was like, "I'll
Mhm.
nap if this is boring," but it was actually so much fun, and I loved it. And
Never
luckily,
looked
I
back
only had
since.
to. I only had to wait 2 years. Everybody else had to wait
Yeah,
like
true.
20 something years. Suckers. I had 2 years to wait for Phantom Menace.
Do you think that because it sounds like you're no, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you're more apt. It sounds like you enjoy Phantom Menace and the prequels more so than a person of the time that had 20 years to wait for it. Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
correct? Are you a prequelist, as we like to say it around here?
Yeah, like, I'm a prequel kid is what I call it. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know about, like, I didn't think they were bad until, like, you watch the news or you
Hmm.
hear about the South Park episode or
Oh
things
my
like that, which
gosh,
I
yeah.
wasn't allowed to watch it as a kid, but I heard about it through, like, other kids who were
You
allowed to
heard
watch it.
rumblings.
Yeah. So, like, I was like, "Oh, is this bad?" I
Hmm.
remember thinking, like, in Attack of the Clones that Anakin and Padme's romance was kinda, like, awkward, but that was because I was, like, a kid who was like, "Oh, secondhand embarrassment."
Hmm.
But I'm like, but that's how when you're 19 and never talked to a girl before, you probably are gonna act.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So like, as a kid, you're like, "Oh, I would never do that. I would never be like, oh, I hate sand,' kind of thing." But then when you look back to how you acted with crushes back in the day, you're like, "Oh, no, I would do that."
Yeah. Dude also had trauma as a slave on a planet that was all sand.
Yep.
Like, there's something hidden there that he's not even getting at, while also talking
Well,
to the girl who's the crush of his dreams.
yeah. Well, Padme's like, "Oh, yeah, I had so much fun on the beach." And he's like, "I had to, like, get sand out of engines and stuff like this."
I had sand everywhere, and if I didn't work hard, I would, who knows the pain and punishment that I would have been put under.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watto wasn't a merciful guy.
So, yeah, I do feel like the prequels coming out when I was a kid and all the toys coming out
Yeah.
and all the merch and, the fast food tie-ins,
Oh,
which
it's best.
the Pizza Hut, KFC,
The Mountain
Taco
Dew
Bell
cans?
tie-in. Yes. The Pepsi, yeah. It was great. So it really did feel like, okay, we're this era.
Hmm. It was a really unique era too for the merchandise of it all, like you were saying. I especially like, especially with regards to Revenge of the Sith, how again they didn't care about spoiling people. Like you knew Vader was
Vader
coming.
was
Like he was a
everywhere.
part of
Vader,
every marketing scheme they did.
I mean, even like the Phantom Menace poster, that
Hmm.
iconic one that you have of Anakin with the shadow of Darth Vader, like it's
Yes, that
there.
one, but with Jar
Yes.
Jar.
Yeah.
He was everywhere. Like I mean,
Hmm.
that was so fun. I wish,
Yeah.
they're very careful with marketing schemes these days, and not to spoil anything. And it's like, oh, a Funko Pop spoiled this character reveal that's going to be in the movie. And back then, oh, no,
Hmm.
no holding back. We're doing everything right. You want burned Anakin uh, action figure? You're gonna get it. Like cut off arms and limbs. It's happening.
Which I think shows like something that maybe like JJ Abrams could have learned is that you don't need a big surprise or twist for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like that's not what's necessary. Even though, like, I guess you think of the Luke, I know I am your father kind of thing as that's one of the biggest twists in
I mean, it
pop
is.
culture
Yeah. No
history.
denying. Yeah.
But it's only one aspect really
Hmm.
of Star Wars.
Yeah, it always doesn't need to be. It's how you execute the overall story at large, I think, and that was pivotal to that. And I think too, like there's an interesting, the people always argue about like what's the viewing order of Star Wars? Do you watch the original films first, then go back and watch episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then you watch the sequel trilogy? Do you watch 4, 5, then 1, 2, 3, 6, 7? Do you want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Do you? I think it's interesting that there's someone out there that watched Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and had no idea. And then they find out Anakin turns to the dark side. That would be a huge twist if I was like at home watching and had no idea what would happen. I'd be like, holy
I had
cow,
a
he's doing that?
I had a friend whose kids loved the Clone Wars,
Uh huh.
and she just did not tell him that Anakin was his favorite, and did not tell him for years. Did not let him see
Really?
Revenge of the Sith or anything like that because it's too violent. He was like a young kid. He thought
Sure.
Anakin's
Um,
greatest. Oh, that poor child.
and then was like surely shocked one day to find out
Yeah.
what lengths he went
What he
to,
becomes.
what he
Yeah.
literally becomes. What have you become? I am what you made me. Technically right from a certain point of view.
Hmm.
But for my first viewing, so I did not do the midnight release. I did have to beg, and plead my mom to take me to the 7 o'clock showing that Friday night because my uncle. So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and so shout out to Movie E Town, which no longer exists, which is the movie theater that I went to for this 7 o'clock showing. The next day, my uncle was getting married in Pittsburgh, which was a prompt 4-hour drive away. That my mom was like, "You can go see it next weekend." I was like, "No, you don't understand. This is the biggest event of my life to this point. I don't care that Uncle
She's
Sean is.
like, "You're 10."
You are 10. You will have bigger experiences than this in your life.
Yes.
Suck it up and
Okay.
deal with it. You don't have to see it. You already know what's going to happen in this thing." And I was like, "No, you don't understand. If I go to school next week and my friends are all talking about it, I'll be the lame one." It was so cool to actually like complain about things like that back then.
Oh,
Um,
no, like, when I walked into school half awake on that Friday, I'd be like, "I saw Revenge of the Sith
it's like,
already."
I know
And
what
they're like,
happens and you don't.
"How?" And I'm like, "Because I was allowed to go to a midnight showing."
Oh, they need to bring back midnight showings. Forget these
No, they do
Thursdays.
not. They do not. I vividly remember going to the midnight showing of Hunger Games, the first Hunger Games movie. It was before they would do the Thursdays, 7, 8
Yep.
PM. I had been up for like 18 hours, and I just like had
Oh,
a
wow.
breakdown when Rue died and just sobbing in the theater. And I'm like, this isn't just about what's on screen,
It's because I'm
but like,
tired.
it's because I'm so tired.
Everything is hitting me double.
I mean, Amandla was great in that.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, speaking of Star Wars. But yeah.
All praise the acolyte. Wonderful show. Wonderful show. Gone too soon. One day. One day. Um, but yeah, so I was able to get that viewing in, and then promptly the next morning at 5 a.m. we were in that car heading up to Pittsburgh and had that wedding, and that was an interesting experience. But I remember just being just awestruck at what I had seen in the cinema that day. It was just a fantastic experience. Um, I loved every second of it. This, like I said, I was saying before when I asked you the question, like, do you consider this to be your Star Wars? And yeah, I consider myself, like you would say, a prequel kid. I grew up with it. I was 4 for Phantom Menace, so like clearly the age demographic was like when George is like it's for 12-year-olds, like slightly under that, but like that was primed for me. Um, so just like having that story just fully play out and just being engrossed with it and just living in it and seeing these stories play out, it was like having this big mythological fantasy world just come to life in front of me. And I was able to take the lessons that are presented there, right, about what's right, what's wrong, what do you do in these situations, and then take that into my own personal life and then try and use that for various things that come up. I'm like, well, Anakin would do that here, and that wasn't great. It didn't turn out great for him. He lived in suffering for the rest of his life. So I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah, what would
So
Anakin not do? I'm gonna
yeah,
put that on a
that's a
bracelet.
great, bracelet, bumper sticker, whatever you don't do as Anakin does. It's probably a great method to live your life by. And yeah, that's always been an interesting one for me.
Something I was thinking about when you were talking about like growing up with this is, yeah, so I watched the special editions. I was a girl who liked
Hmm.
special I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
I was one of the only girls, but when the prequels came out, I was because going to the movies in the early 2000s like was the thing to do.
It was your Friday night
Like,
activity, especially in
yeah.
some of these
So,
towns.
yeah, especially when you're like 9 to 18, like
Hmm.
what else were you going to do? So, I would be able to get like my girlfriends to come see Star Wars with me.
Yeah.
I would make like a whole thing out of it, and more and more people my age, kids, would be watching Star Wars. It wasn't just like a boy thing
Hmm.
like it was in 1997, which was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Everyone loved Padme.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
That's awesome. Now, as a girl, as a lady, how did you feel about like being a part of the fandom in around 2005? Like, did you feel otherized or ostracized at all? Did you feel included, or did you even know that there was like this grander thing called fandom, and you were just in your bubble in your town with your friends and just having a great time?
I mean, I was like on fanfiction.net, and
Okay.
I was on LiveJournal. LiveJournal was pretty big.
Hmm.
So luckily, like with like LiveJournal, there was like very small pockets that
Yeah.
you could kind of like join. and fan fiction that, it was very different than what it was before. So there wasn't really like the social media, so I didn't really understand like, oh, maybe like this is just for boys. I did know because all the Star Wars stuff was in the boys section. But
Hmm.
luckily I had very like parents who did not care about that kind of stuff. So I got Barbies
Sure.
and I got Star Wars action figures
Best of
because
both
I like
worlds.
both.
Yeah.
So it was great. The Barbies did not fit in the Millennium Falcon. I tried. They were too big.
Time to get a bigger Falcon so they can fit in.
Yeah.
Come on, come on,
Um
George. Merchandising. Think about it.
exactly, exactly. But yeah, so I didn't ever feel like there wasn't like merch for me
Hmm.
because I would just take whatever was Star Wars, like the Amidala like Barbie dolls or
Yeah.
like I remember Phantom Menace especially, like they had these little diaries that was the movie's point of view from like
Hmm.
Obi-Wan's, Anakin's, and Padme's point of view.
Those books rocked. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I loved them. I adored them.
When I
So
found those at
yeah,
the
like
Scholastic Book Fair, that day was over.
yes, Galactic Book Fairs were the best day of my life.
Still are. I still think
Like,
about them.
yep, yep. Get a little cash and just like you're just
Well, they
rolling.
give you like the first off, I don't know how your school was like, so
Mm.
tell me if it was any different. But we would get like the paper,
Catalog.
like the catalog. Yes, the catalog
Yeah,
that would like
yeah, and you
prep you to what was coming, and then even our librarian like a week out would be like, "Hey, here's a walkthrough. Do you see anything you like? Make sure you go tell your parents about what you saw here." And like I go like, "Hey, mom, I saw all these cool books. What do you think about it?"
yeah, circling everything and just
Circling it
being like,
all and just like especially for like the orders one, like around Christmas
mhm.
time, I'd just drop it off with my mom, and she was with the stuff circled, and then she'd put in the
Yeah.
order, give it back to me in an envelope so that I could just give it back to my teacher, and then they give it to you in like a bag so that you couldn't see what was in it, and then promptly gifted for Christmas. It was a great time.
Mhm. Yeah, so I didn't understand that until like there was always a few boys who were like, "You're a girl, you're not supposed to like this," and I'm
Hmm.
like, "There's a princess in it. How am I
Literally.
not supposed to like
A
this?"
queen too, like.
A queen later on. She has very pretty gowns.
Hmm.
There's romance and hot guys as I grew older, so
All that.
like I was just like, how is this not for me?
Literally, the romance is like the central thing in Star Wars. Like you don't have it without the romance. If like Anakin and Padme don't have this forbidden Romeo and Juliet love, you don't get
There would
Luke
be
and
no Luke
Leia.
and Leia. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's kind of important.
Exactly. But that's what like hooked me in. Like watching A New Hope, I was like, okay, this is boring, boring, boring. And then Leia shows up, and I'm like,
Hmm.
she's a princess, and she's not scared of this Vader, who I knew Vader was already. But
Yeah,
she was like being all brave and tough, and I'm like, she's the coolest person in the entire galaxy. I love her. I'm in 110%.
I love it. I love
So
it. I'm glad to hear that you felt included and welcome from an early age and all that. I will say from my experience for liking these films, I experienced a lot of bullying, not just for liking Star Wars, but for liking the prequels. I would be bullied by other Star Wars fans very harshly for just
not
being
adult
like
Star Wars fans,
adults
right?
would oh
Oh my
yes. Oh, it
goodness.
was rough. Like I had to really circumvent how I talked about Star Wars if I ever did with people older than me. So honestly, people like 25, 30 would be like, "You dummy! How did you like these?" um, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I do. So like, deal with it. Like, if you don't, that's cool. But like, I'm not forcing you to like it." So like, people will say like, "Oh yeah, are you a fan of the Star Wars?" And then I would have to like reword it. So I know people will say like, "I'm a prequelist these days," is a very proud way of saying like, "Oh, I grew up with the prequels. I love them from the start. It's not some revisionist history of like I love them to spite the sequel trilogy like I see nowadays." Um, no, I was in it from the start, and what I would say is, oh yes, I like Star Wars. I'm a sagaist. I would say that as a way to be like, I like all of it, and then people, of course, would be like, oh, what do you think about this part of A New Hope and all that? And I'd be like, okay, that's great. And then I would also be like, but Jar Jar is also cool too, and he's the key to all this, and
Yeah.
they would never take that bait. And but yeah, so different. That was kind of my experience growing up with this. But I think because of that, it made me, in a way, become more defensive of these films over time and through the years, especially Revenge of the Sith, because I've seen a lot of like hateful YouTube videos over the years. Uh, people trying to get clickbait videos and things about all these different
Mhm.
types of things in order to generate views and monetize these things. And like, no, this film is actually kind of, in my opinion, is a secret masterpiece. It kind of hits everything that you need to in a Star Wars film. That's really great, and it's unique. You know the entire story heading into it, but it's got this great cold open, a really delicious middle act that goes a ton of different ways with a lot of like philosophical intrigue, and then it lands with a really epic action sequence that brings it all home and concludes the saga in a great way. Like, if you don't like it, then I don't think you like Star Wars a whole lot.
I'm fairly sure there probably were people who were like, you like this?" But, like, as a kid, I did not care what people said. A
That's good.
lot of the times,
That's great.
I was very much just like, "I got things to do. Bye."
Great.
I don't know why, but, like, I wish I had that when I was more, like, got older and a teenager and in my 20s,
Hmm.
but, like, especially when I was, like, 10, 11, I was just like, "Whatever, like, this is what I'm doing."
No, I think that's the perfect mentality to have when it comes to this stuff, right? And then just for fandom in general, if you're a fan of other things too, like, who cares if you like it? I like it. This is my bubble. I'm living in it. You can't break it, which I think is a very healthy and appropriate way to have for things,
I'm very glad social media was not a thing, though,
but
when these
also very
movies came out.
helpful. Yes. I could,
Facebook, I think, had just come out when Revenge of the Sith came out, but it was only based you can only be friends with people who went to your own college.
sure.
It was
Yep.
only open for college students.
Oh, but MySpace
And
was around, and
oh, MySpace was around, but you
Zanga,
weren't really
if you
talking
remember
about
that back in the
movies.
days.
Yeah, but I don't think like Friendster and everything like that. I
Oh
don't think
yes.
you were talking really about movies on there or
No,
pop
it was just
culture.
your AIM account back back in the day, just
Yeah.
chatting
You
with
put
friends
you
after
put an
school.
angsty quote,
Yeah,
angsty
you're
quote
either with
there
me or
or
you're my enemy. I think
yep.
I used that a few times. Red Sith had some good angsty quotes in there. Thank you, Anakin,
Oh,
for
yes.
providing the juice on that one. Um, so now that 20 years have passed, how does this film hold up in your opinion, or does it? Do you have any different opinions on it from the first viewing that you had up to now?
I think the Clone Wars has changed a lot about how I view Revenge of the Sith, and I think it makes it even darker and
And when you say Clone
fuller.
Wars, you mean the 2008 series with
Yes,
Ahsoka.
the
You're
Clone
right. Okay,
Wars. Yeah.
sure.
With like especially with the Ahsoka aspect and season 6 and the whole Mandalore arc and just knowing how much Anakin has on the line,
Hmm.
even though I know this all wasn't in the movie originally, but just like knowing like he thinks he's getting Ahsoka back and he's going to be a father and he's reunited with Padme.
Yep.
He's like everything's going my
Top of the world.
way.
Then he has these dreams. He's like, oh no,
Yep, and then it's
not
just
again.
like it makes it even worse,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
His
I
spiral
love
is
because
harder
that's
to
just
watch because of that.
yeah, it's a perfect tragedy and just like also like knowing Ahsoka could have said something and all those kind of things. It enhances it. I think it was already
Yeah.
great, but I love watching it
But
more
now it's
now. I
even
love
better.
watching it with it.
I love it.
Yes,
I love it. So
exactly.
do you like supercut somehow a Siege of Mandalore arc intersected with the Revenge of the Sith in how you view it? Do you watch like the first episode of that arc and then Revenge of the Sith and then the last three
Just parts
episodes?
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that would be great to get a cut of that on Disney Plus, like right after like because like there's a point where like she's talking to Obi-Wan and it's right before
Hmm.
Obi-Wan goes to get Grievous and then you
Yeah.
cut that through. That would be amazing. But yeah, no, last time I did a full rewatch of like just the season 6, I watched Revenge of the Sith right after there because I was like,
As you should.
I need that point. Hmm.
I mean, it's the only way to go after this. Well, I
Yep.
guess you could say Bad Batch, but like,
Yep.
Revenge of Sith is the climactic moment of that story that then leads you into everything that happens. It's like this watershed moment that then springs everything forward. Um, I think exactly yes, anding everything you said there. I think this movie holds up really well, and in many ways, the story is, it's about how good people turn into fascists. And I hate to say it, but in the real world we're facing today, it's arguably scary how similar I'm seeing some revelations of this film play out in real time. It's also ironic that, watching this, I happen to turn on a documentary about like the war on terror and 9/11, and knowing that this film was written in a 2002 2003 headspace. I'm like, oh yep, there's the quote Bush said, if you're not with me then you're my enemy. I was like, oh, George Lucas had some things to say then, and George's theorems about democracy and how it's lost over time and given away, it still has some merit.
It's very interesting since we were kids back then to look at the political landscape of America because like we weren't paying attention
Yes.
or we knew the very basics of it
Mm-hmm.
and n- learning like what happened late 90s early 2000s where George's head was, everything makes so much more sense at
Mm-hmm.
that point.
Totally. And like you said, the Clone Wars just adds, it didn't need it, right? I think,
No.
it sounds like we're the same ilk where it's like Revenge
Mhm.
of Sith was awesome on its own. Attack of the
Yep.
Clones was great. Like you watch them both and you have this wonderful experience of watching these great set of movies. But you add 7 seasons of Clone Wars in between there. Even if you watch the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, I think they did a great job of bridging the gap as well, too, in a different way, just more quicker and to the point. But you still get a lot of Clone War stories, and some of the beats are kind of myriad similar. But with this more time and effort spent in that space, right, you get so much more time with the clones. You're seeing characters like Oddball take center stage in some episodes. You're seeing Rex, and you learn about Ahsoka and how that impacts the Anakin story overall. And when she leaves the Jedi Order, and he's like dealing with this like sense of self issue, frankly, with Anakin, and knowing that he's having these like marital issues too with Padme at various points within the whole story, just adds so much more
I
depth
have
and
a
intrigue.
I have a fan theory that
Ooh,
I know some
lay it
people
on me.
might not like. Okay. So you know the Clovis episodes.
I
I
sure
think
do.
I got it wrong. Yeah, there's 7 seasons of Clone Wars, but I think it's season 6 where like he beats up
Oh,
Clovis.
to a pulp, yes.
Yes, in front of Padme. And these are like red flags
She does not like it at
everywhere.
all. Yeah, it's
And
it's
she's
bad.
like there's no resolution for them at that point. So I think they might be not together really, but then she finds out
Mm,
she's pregnant
mm.
and then she reconnects with him
Because frankly, they don't really interact as far as we know.
with
Who
the
knows? There might be
timeline.
like 7 books in the next 10 years written about
Yeah.
between that Clovis arc
Those
and
2.5 years, a lot happened.
right?
A
Like
lot
so
happened in
much
those
goes
2.5
on.
years.
Um and yeah, so it might just not be a whole lot of interaction. But he sounds like he's in the sieges out in the outer
Mm,
rim, and she, when they meet again, first thing, he's
it,
like, there've been rumors
she's
you were
like,
killed. I didn't know. And
yeah,
when you could potentially hear that your husband, your loved one, your spouse is gone, right? That kind of, for some people, the absolution of forgiveness, right? Everything you did is out the window. I'm glad you're alive. We can work on things later, but forget the past. It's all about the now. And now I'm pregnant. We got to figure out where we're having this baby. I probably won't be able to serve a senator anymore. If the Jedi Council finds out, well, you're out of here too, boy. Um,
yeah.
yeah, that's
So there's even
yeah.
like so much heightenedness with their relationships, with why he's not
Hmm.
telling her everything,
Hmm.
so
Yeah, he's
again,
also,
just
yeah,
adds
very much
layers.
like, I don't I'm not the Jedi I should be. Well, let me help you. No, no one can help me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
do this
He's
all on
like,
my own here. I'm not gonna let what happened to my mother happen to you. I'm gonna find this devil
I'm
space
gonna
wizard.
fix it. I'm not gonna get a midwife or a doctor or anything. I'm gonna fix it.
Yes, only my new powers can save you.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Why did he look for a doctor? I've never thought about that. You could have just been like, hey, can
They
you like,
didn't even they didn't even know there were twins. I thought they were gonna
yeah, get an
explain it better
ultrasound.
why they didn't think there was twins.
Like,
Like
was she
that is
that secretive with
mind-boggling
it?
to
She'd
me.
even get an ultrasound, like
Oh
pay
my
off.
god, is the Senate healthcare worse than our
It
healthcare
might be.
in America?
It might be. Well, like maybe like there'd be a leak or something like that. Like, oh, Padme Amidala pregnant. Who's the father? Kind of deal. This whole political scandal that could have been. I mean, what's the book? Bloodline, I think. From
Yeah.
when Leia finds out, or when it gets out that Leia is the daughter of Vader, and that causes a whole thing. When Padme's like, I might not be able to serve anymore if they find out that I've had kids. Like, oh, maybe that's why I should try and keep it under wrap. But like, there wasn't like in the underworld of Coruscant, there wasn't some doctor she could have paid off to be hush hush
There
about
was
things.
there wasn't like a droid that you could have like memory wiped after. I don't know.
Oh, that's true. Yes, one of those
There's so
Oopa
much.
droids. Oopa, Oopa. Anybody? Nothing. Not even
Nope.
like the clone
Nope.
doctors. Nothing. There's a
Yeah.
whole war
Yeah.
going
Because
on. There's hospital wings everywhere. Wow. Padme
the
is
kid
also
was
she's a she's an accomplice in this too. They're both
Padme.
making the dumbest
That's
calls.
that is the one issue I have with this movie, and it's Padme
Okay.
being kind of like barefoot and pregnant.
Sure. Let's
And
get
it,
into that. Yeah, let's so in hindsight, what are some of the things perhaps that you would change or wish would have been presented different? It sounds like the Padme is top of that list here.
yeah, Padme is like one of our like, especially at the Waffle, we talk about her a lot because she's such an influence. Because growing up and
Yeah,
seeing her,
absolutely.
and
Our queen
um,
to this day.
yeah. Oh my goodness. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, 14. Yes, at 14, I could be queen. And then once you get to 14, you're like, what?
It's like the Little Mermaid, dude. I'm 16, Dad. I can't treat me like this
Yeah.
or whatever. It's like my
Yeah,
wife
when you're
says that
like,
all the
hey,
time. She's like,
yeah.
"Boy, when I was 16, I thought I was the king of the world, and now I'm in my 30s." I'm like, "Oh well."
No, sit down, child. Sit down. Listen to your father.
That's right.
You're 16. You're an idiot.
You can barely drive. You can't figure this
Yes.
out.
No.
But yeah,
But
Queen of a Planet at 14.
yeah.
Crazy.
So she has all these like really badass moments in both Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. And then I understand it only happens in a few days in Revenge of the Sith, but she's very much just a catalyst for Anakin.
Hmm.
And seeing the deleted scenes of her helping make the like start the rebellion,
Yeah.
I feel really would have given her more agency
Hmm.
and would have been great for like the young girls in the audience like me and my friends to see. Like even
Right.
though okay, she's gone, and the way it's written on like after she gives birth, like no, she just lost the will to live. And I'm like, she lost the will to live when she has two children who are going to be hunted by this empire. Like my Padme would fight.
Her broken heart, man, really got to her. I got some theories on that. We can chat about that if you want.
Oh yeah, I got theories on that one too. That's like one of our first videos. Is like she was murdered.
Yeah. Well, that's the big one. Was
Yeah,
Palpatine manipulating that
I
in some
have to
way?
believe that. I
Uh,
have to believe that.
I'm also of the mind where I will yes that theory. Plus, also, I'm not sure how like Anakin force chokes her, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that reflects on a trachea. Uh, like does it show like I don't know how the force works in that way. So that's like if it appears medically like there's nothing, but the force was messing with it and could have contracted some of those throat muscles to make her not be able to breathe, then it also explains why the droid is like, I don't understand. I don't understand the force. This doesn't make sense to me. We're losing her. I can't explain it. Like, I don't know. I've
I would
tried to work my way through
yeah.
it.
I would figure like with a force choke, it's just like it's a physical thing that happens to you, and then once it's over, you'll still have like damage to your
Yeah.
throat, which a droid would be able to see in theory, a medical professional. You wouldn't
You
see
would
like
think. You would
handprints or
think.
anything. But maybe they weren't good droid
Maybe
medical.
they weren't.
I'm trashing the droids now.
Yeah, those Upod droids were, doing their best. Doing their best there out there
Yeah.
on Polis Massa. And I will say too, the real world probably reason is Anakin killed her, but in a movie where the main
Hmm.
protagonist is already killing kids, he's about to be burned alive to a crisp and then become the great dark lord of over this fascist empire that's going to rule the galaxy for upwards of 20 years. One more thing on the list for that's intended for kids of him killing his spouse. It might have been one too much for George to swallow on there. So she has to
Yeah.
die of a broken heart, unfortunately, which apparently made us all go to the internet and then look up, is it possible to die of a broken heart? Which apparently is a real medical issue. So
Which got me real worried when I was about to start dating. And I was like, oh no.
If it
Oh
happened to Padme,
no.
it could happen to me.
She was queen at 14. At 14, I was doing nothing but ballet classes.
She had all
That's
the
it.
stress of running a planet, couple terms too. She was, elected again, I think, and then immediately becomes a senator very soon after that, and serves
Mm-hmm.
with dignity and honor, and dealing with the whole war and the creation of the clone army and the all that stuff. And but she couldn't handle her husband going down a different path. You know, shame, shame. The tragedy of Anakin Skywalker. It all comes back to
Yeah.
it. I will say too, the Padme thing is of all the things in Star Wars that you have to like walk around with theories and headcanon and all that stuff, that's definitely the most of anything that I think that anybody in this fandom has to think about on a daily basis. I know I do. Um, and then the thing too is like I do wish not only was there a better, perhaps more clear cut reasoning for the Padme of it all at the end of the film, but I would have loved to, like you said, seen some of those deleted scenes included where she is. The legacy of Padme is not just Luke and Leia, but also that she started this rebellion that then we see Luke and Leia become a part of. I think that would have been an awesome plot point. Now I don't know behind the scenes if there were rumors of things. I've heard rumblings over the years about on set problems and stuff like that. Who knows? Um, but I will say it's a shame personally that they had a chance to go back and kind of like rewrite history a little bit with the Clone Wars, and they had every opportunity to kind of reinstate that Padme storyline in some way, and then yet didn't. So I feel like when you have a chance to go back and do it, and then you drop the ball on that front, it's a shame. It's a shame. I was looking forward to that, hopefully being a part of, especially that season 7.
Yeah. I was really hoping that with the Revenge of the Sith re-release in theaters, maybe they would add those
Oh, a
deleted
special
scenes
edition.
back in. Yeah, especially with like Andor coming
And
out and
Mon
having
Mothma
Mon
being a part of it,
Mothma
right? Yeah,
there. Yeah. And I think it's also important just seeing more Bail Organa, because then you can see like where Leia also like gets it from too.
sure.
Like
Yeah,
how she's raised and
all the parental figures in one space.
yep.
Oh, I'm all for it. I like it. You will not find a more ardent supporter of the special editions and all the changes that George has made, all the way from Who Shot First all the way to Clunky. I love them all. These are
McClunky.
great things about Star Wars, in my opinion. And I would love that tradition to continue with, in a 4DX theater, roaming around and zooming around to Revenge of the Sith, and then to have this political intrigue scene where Anakin is in one corner of the room and Padme is like, we gotta start doing this rebellion kind of thing here, or like you gotta. I think the scene is there's two of them where there's the one where they're actually sitting in a room and hashing out. All right, we should start some type of secret rebellion kind of thing, and then there's the other one where they're actually like talking to Palpatine and being like, "Are you gonna give up power anytime soon here?"
He's like, maybe.
He's like, "You guys,
Maybe.
one day, the war's still going on. I can't, And then, the attack on his life leaves him scarred and deformed, and the Jedi must be hunted down. Oh well, I haven't seen this story play out before in any way, shape, or form. So, is there anything else that you would wish that could be slightly different or changed in this film?
No, I think that's really the only thing everything else I think is great.
Okay, works for me too. We'll move on then. We talked a little bit about the fact that this film, because of where it takes place in the timeline, and that other films take place after it, that it has a lot of like points to hit in order to complete the gaps, basically, of the story. So, for example, Order 66 was something we didn't know it was called Order 66 at the time, but like the Purge of the Jedi was something. There's not a lot of Jedi at all in the original trilogy, so that was something that needed to be addressed. The birth of the twins, so finding out how Luke and Leia are a thing and how they're born. Also, like how Vader happens, right? Anakin and Obi-Wan were to have this climactic battle that was kind of spoiled by toys back in the 80s to be like there was a volcanic incident and that's how Vader is formed. But the how of that coming into play was something that was, I think, very much a thing that people were looking forward to. Which reveal in 2005, let's say this, which reveal were you most looking forward to seeing and why? And then when you saw the film, did it live up to your expectation, the answer that you received?
Yeah, it was definitely the Anakin Obi-Wan fight
Mm-hmm.
because, you see them in Attack of the Clones, even in the first half of this movie. It's like they're pals.
Yeah.
They're buddies, and you're just wondering how can they get to the point where one of them is on fire, you know?
Literally, like
Yeah.
I always like I am saddened, but it's like George doesn't like skip a beat here. He turns, like, you see Anakin catch on fire and you hear him, and boy, does that camera zoom right back to him and zoom in, and just like you see him just burning alive. He does not give any hesitation to what's going on there. He's like, you guys got to see what's happening to this guy because of the choices he made.
I think also it's to show us like, okay, this is why Obi-Wan thinks he's dead. Because
Yep,
like
that's why
who
he's
can
he's
live through
pretty
this?
sure no one's getting out
He's
of
like,
that.
yeah. He's like, I didn't know I had to go check.
Which makes the reveal in Kenobi so much awesome, in my opinion. Like the finding out, like, oh, he's still alive. Oh, didn't think that was possible, but if
Maybe
Maul can
like, oops.
survive, if
Yeah.
Maul can make it,
Spite
and
is very powerful. Spite.
yeah, hate is a thing that keeps people alive. And when he's literally yelling, "I hate you," I mean,
Yeah.
my poor Hayden, what a guy, all that,
Yeah.
a beautiful guy, just
Yep.
burned alive to this horrible existence.
It's just so funny because like Hayden's now the age that Anakin is in the OG
Yes,
trilogy.
yes, which makes sense.
So yeah. So
Sorry,
it's like this is what he would look like without the suit.
you know, um, I've always been a fan of the change in Return of the Jedi to have it be Hayden for the reason of,
I was a kid. I didn't know who that
well,
guy was.
oh really? You're like, oh
Yeah.
wait, with
My
Hayden
dad
or
would be like
Sebastian Shaw?
Sebastian Shaw.
Okay,
Like
you're
I
like,
was
who's
like,
that guy?
okay, who's that guy? Yeah, exactly. I was like, who's he? And my dad's like, I think that's supposed to be Darth Vader. I was like, how do you know?
Doesn't look like him. I don't know.
He was all
He's
like
just this
messed up in the
joyous guy
face.
smiling. Like, I don't know. But also,
Yeah.
Sebastian Shaw was like 70 at the time. So, like,
Yeah.
Anakin being canonically like 45, 46 when he actually
Yeah.
dies, and Hayden being roughly like 44, 43 right now.
Yeah.
Um, also tracks to like, also Hayden has aged pretty well, I'll say, since the
Hmm.
last 20 years. And he looks very similar. And we've seen Kenobi. You just put that wig on him, and he looks very minimal de
Yeah.
aging to get him back to the Attack of the Clones look. I've always been a proponent of like, all right, well, I believe in what George says that like Anakin dies, like the good person that was Anakin died, and Darth Vader was reborn. They're two people. That's the canon thought that I've been using for the last 20 plus years here. But also for people that are like, it wouldn't be him, it would be this older version of him. And it's like, well, technically Hayden still looks like that. So if you think Hayden is
Yeah.
Anakin Skywalker and you see him now at the age that he would have been, and they look similar, there's no complaints now. Like if Hayden would have looked
Mm-mm.
completely different all these years later, they're like, okay, maybe you got something on that argument, but it's irrefutable in my opinion.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, the Anakin Obi-Wan duel is, I think, what I was looking forward to most as well. I think like a script of all the
Yeah.
things, a script doesn't really show action well. That's all
You
just
didn't get the
like
storyboards or anything?
no
You couldn't find
storyboards.
those?
No, unfortunately, that didn't hit
I
the
bet if
internet.
I bet if there were cell phone cameras at the time that didn't suck, you would have been able to find them.
You would have been some terrible Nokias getting some on-set green screen, blue
Yeah.
screen footage of all the things. Yeah, that would have been wild. And yeah, someone getting like a picture at ILM of like George being like, "All right, this is real. This isn't real. This is real. This isn't real." That would have taken things to a whole new stratosphere for that experience. But yes, having almost no clue of like what the actual battle and action itself was, I think this is truly the prequel choreography being on full display in this episode, both in terms of physicality, but also emotion behind the physicality. Right, it matches and blends both perfectly. These brothers going against each other, but frankly, that's kind of the problem. Is that Obi-Wan's looking at him as a brother, and that's
Yep.
never it. You were his dad, and then he found a father figure in someone else, and that's why we're in this mess right now. It's like if someone would have stepped up along the way and actually been what Anakin needed them to be, this whole thing could have been avoided. It always. I don't know about you, but every time I watch this movie, there's like a part of me that hopes that it's something different
Yeah.
happens. Right? I'm always
Yeah.
hoping that like every time Anakin and
Let's just hug it
Obi-Wan,
out, guys.
yeah, every time that Anakin and
Just hug
Obi-Wan
it
are
out.
like, "May the Force be with you," and he goes off to Utapau and does his thing, and that's the last time they see each other as confidants and friends. And I'm like, oh, does something different happen here? Does he stay, as Mace Windu says, and doesn't go to the Chancellor's office? Like, please do make the right choice this time. And I'm always I'm always let
Oh,
down every time.
it's the same thing watching the Mandalore arc is like, no, Ahsoka, call him. Call
Mm-hmm.
him. Reach Anakin. If she reached him,
Could have been different.
everything I think could have
Yeah.
changed. Or if she told them about, what happened
Lesson
with
learned in
what
our.
Maul said.
That's right. For everybody, like this is a lesson for to take from this is like you never know the impact you can have on somebody at any given moment, right? So it's something to take to heart from this space opera and how it plays out in the real world. It's always something interesting about this. And yeah, I'm always like devastated. Like I didn't go different this time. How is that possible? Hopes and dreams getting let down on that one. But yeah, I love this fight sequence. I actually even so much that my friend and I learned the entire choreography with like these Nerf baseballs that we just kept hitting each other with in my driveway for hours. And yeah, we learned the entire. I was the Anakin, and Obi-Wan was his favorite character, so he gladly learned the choreography for his side. And once we got that DVD, boy, did we just pause, rewind, pause, rewind. All right, this is what happens here. This is what happens here. Thankfully, kids' portable DVD players were a thing at that time, so we could take it out on the driveway with us and watch at the same time as we were trying to figure this out. What a wonderful afternoon that was. And could I remember any of it still now? Nope, but a lot of great fun experiences from that. So always something. The power of play back in 2005 was like we had all these devices in our hands, but yet somehow like we didn't just rely on one specific source of entertainment for joy. We still did use physical things like action figures and our imagination versus just like, all right, playing a game on my phone and watching a show and streaming it and all that stuff. Different time. um so I would be at fault here in our conversation if I didn't bring up the maestro John Williams. And arguably, at least in my opinion, I think Revenge of the Sith is like a greatest hits soundtrack and then some when it comes to the score overall. What is your favorite track or musical beat within the film?
I think it's the Anakin versus Obi-Wan.
They'll
Is
call
I
it
think is what it's called.
Battle of the Heroes and Anakin versus Obi-Wan. It's the same motif, right? It comes up
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah, and it's very Duel of the Fates coded. I
Oh,
feel
I
like
love when that little
it's
beat there
under
comes in. Yeah.
yeah. I feel like it's very underrated
Mm-hmm.
because Duel of Fates gets all the, shine.
Sure does.
But but yeah, I think it just again, it just adds to the tension even though you know what's going to happen, it
Mm-hmm.
just adds to the anticipation of like when is it going to happen?
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's a long action sequence too. So for John to just like be on his game this entire time,
Oh,
and for six
doesn't miss.
films up to this point, right? Like he's not just phoning it in, as some might say, right? That you could easily just like reuse themes from other stuff, but to create new themes for the Phantom Menace, like that's almost an entirely different soundtrack than the original Star Wars films. Attack of the Clones, you add Across the Stars to that.
So
Wow,
pretty.
it's majestic in its work. And then you add Battle of the Heroes and like Anakin's dark deeds and Anakin's betrayal and uh you know uh Padme's ruminations, just like this whole sequence of like so much going on without anything being said, where it's just Anakin looking out into the distance and thinking and contemplating the choices in front of him, and Padme at the other end looking too. Just the fact that they're able to say so much in a scene that says nothing at all is so powerful, and I attribute that to John Williams and his impressive score there.
Yeah, and it's like you were saying, like it's also different, but it's still so cohesive. With it feels Star Wars.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's out of place at all, and it especially feels specific for Revenge of the Sith prequel Star Wars, right? It definitely has a different look and feel to it. And I couldn't imagine this score any other way. I couldn't imagine them just throwing like the Han and Leia theme from Empire into this story. No, Across the Stars is the tragic love story of Anakin and Padme, and the fact that that motif comes up, but also like there's a throughout the film, without just like the specific score tracks, like if you were to get the CD and put it in, or let's do it on Spotify these days, right? You get a different way of reviewing it. But when you're watching the movie and you're just hearing like background things, and it's just like this ominous tone almost throughout the entirety of the film, you're just like feeling the suspense of knowing that something's not right here, something's off, things aren't going to go the way that we want them to go in this film. This fairy tale is going to have a dark ending, and it's a dark film throughout for the most part. But like that opera sequence where Darth Plagueis, and it's just kind of this low bass tone playing the entire time. All the not the Padme, but like the Palpatine manipulation and given the seduction scenes in a way are just like beautifully drawn with this undertone of bass. Not even in the Emperor's theme, just like this low hum. You're just
Yeah.
like, man, Anakin's just he's getting seduced by the dark side here, and I can feel it.
Yeah, that like the Imperial March
Yeah, Vader's theme just like
motif,
apparently
and
just
yeah.
like peers up here and there, just like, and it's very used seldomly throughout with like much
Yeah.
intent.
It's subtle, but like it still invokes something. John knows like, okay, well, these notes will make you think
Hmm.
of this, and it's amazing how like those feelings just pop up.
I think so too, and the way he's able to, I guess, transition it. Also, I want to say Padme's funeral is that score is so haunting. Like
Oh,
it's
the
so
chorus,
sad. The chorus that's going on, yeah. The
yeah.
I don't want to, for copyright reasons, I don't want to. Also, I can't emote a whole chorus. I'm just me. Uh, that whole thing going on while at the same time, it's like like her death and funeral, but the birth of Vader, right? Him coming up and then doing
Mhm.
the infamous Padme, where is she? Is she safe? Is she all right? Scene. Um, John Williams makes that scene so elegant in a way that I don't think could be possible without John Williams doing this. I mean, he's John
Yeah.
Williams for a reason. He's the maestro. He's going to make
Mhm.
it happen. And then the way I'll get to my original point here that I was saying is that he's able to weave it in with like, all right, now Leia's born. Leia's theme starts to come into things. You see
Mhm.
Alderaan, Leia's theme, the twin sons, right? Owen and Beru are looking off at their adventure now. Their twin sons' journey moment is now being parents, and now with knowing canon that they were looking forward to having a kid one day, and they were having difficulties, and now they were able to actually have that, and it actually be a kind of a half brother, uncle, whatever, uh, whatever the relationship kind of is.
Stepbrother.
Stepbrother, that's right. And now it's somewhat in the family.
Yeah.
That means so much to them, and I think that's beautiful. And then I think when the credits are rolling, right, and you get all the different like Star Wars themes throughout, Princess Leia's theme, the throne room sequence, plus Battle of the Heroes thrown in there too. I'm like, man, the saga is complete. Yeah, obviously we have some more stories to be told after this, but at that time, 2005, I was like, okay, I'm good. I got a whole wonderful collection of stories here. I got, maybe there's a chance for other things, but from right now, I'm content with everything that's been told here.
Yeah.
So this is my last question here, Candace, and I want you to list and share as many that you like here for this. But what are your favorite moments in this movie?
Um, it's such a silly moment. But the Obi-Wan just going hello there, just jumping, like being so dramatic. Like you had the opportunity for surprise, Obi-Wan. This is where Anakin gets it from. He just jumps down, just watching it, and just him popping up. He's like, hello there. And you're like,
A film that I guess it would be an unintentionally, like, I'm not sure if they intended it to be as funny as it plays out, but just like the
yeah,
Obi-Wan tongue-in-cheek humor moment that we see, especially
yeah,
so much of the Alec Guinness version, and in A
yes,
New Hope particularly, him just hopping down there and going, hello there. Just so
yeah.
good.
And him just shooting Grievous is how, like, it's even funnier now after
Hmm.
watching the Clone Wars, where you
The
see
dance that they've had for
Grievous,
all these years.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Grievous taking out all of these other Jedi. and he
Mhm.
gets taken down by like Obi-Wan shooting him, and Obi-Wan is like, oh, so uncivilized, which again is
Love it.
more Alec Guinness, so it's just these great moments. Yeah, and just the opening, which I didn't read the script, unlike some people. So like I had like the opening was like it's so well choreographed, which is a weird thing to say about like ships. But like
The ILM
it's such a
digitizers really did a great job of putting things in
yeah.
place.
And it's just so fun, and it shows that dynamic between Anakin and Obi-Wan where they're blood brothers. They've been
Mhm.
through this, and it just such a good way to like show like how far they come, and then
Yeah.
makes everything worse at the end.
Yeah, you have
And
a
then the whole Dooku thing,
oh,
I did not see coming.
really?
Yeah, I didn't know.
You
I
didn't
didn't know.
you didn't know? Oh, I knew he was getting decapitated. I remember clearly a line where it was like, "And his head falls off."
Oops.
The hands too. Oh man. And then followed by a quick "do it." Oh, so good.
Which I'm like, it makes sense, but like I was still like surprised. I was like, okay, wait, yeah, this is happening. But I think what something that I didn't appreciate until like I was older was the Mace Palpatine scene
Mhm.
and how Anakin reacts
Right.
and how that's just the turning point
That's
and
it.
how like you can't go back from that. Like I get it now, like
Hmm.
why he's like no, because there's no going back from taking out one of the Grand Masters and
Yeah, it's not like Yoda's gonna be like, I forgive you. It was
yeah,
it was a hard day.
you you yeeted him off the like after cutting off his hand, like like there's no going back after that.
Mhm.
So it just it makes the whole Vader transformation make so much more sense.
Yeah,
And yeah,
love it.
and just like that scene of like you don't see what he does to the younglings,
Mhm.
but the scene with the kid jumping when the lightsaber,
Oh,
beautiful.
yes. Yes. Oh,
Terrifying, utterly terrifying to me.
they're so just how well they act in that sequence is just it's heartbreaking. It's just
Yeah.
the tragedy of Revenge of the Sith is just how avoidable all this was, and
Mhm.
and then just seeing it play out each and every time. It's just sad. There's no happy ending here. That's why you need
Nope.
a new hope, right?
Mhm.
I'm glad that we have now. If you watch like all these movies throughout, and even the shows too, I'm glad like a thing like Solo exists that has a lot of lighthearted and
Yeah,
plucky moments.
cuz you can't go from this to Rogue One.
Even to Kenobi, and then to
Yeah.
Rogue
You're just
One, and
like I'm
all
going
of
to be
that.
sad for a while.
Like, I gotta have a little bit of joy here. Sparks, have Han go on an adventure where he finds, do the Kessel Run. I need it.
Yeah. Let him meet Chewie.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Kira Kira femme fatale character, and leaves him, but he goes off to Tatooine, and his journey's out in that other end there. He'll figure it out.
Mhm. And
Han's
Donald Glover.
Han's a
It's great.
survivor. Yeah, yeah, the Han Lando stuff. I love you. I hate you. I know. Kind of deal. Oh, so good, so good, and then much needed after watching your main character literally be cooked alive,
Mhm.
and have a whole different origin story too than creating Vader. It's a great, horrible tragedy. The Order 66 of this all is just so sad. That scene gets me every time. Like, especially I think Kiadi Mundi turning around and just looking at his troops and realizing what's happening, and just for a split
Oh.
second you're just like, oh man, it's it.
Oh, Plo Koon after watching the Clone
Mm-hmm.
Wars, how close he is, how cute he is with Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Like their relationship is adorable. And it's just and also his relationship with his clone troopers.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like other than Anakin, he's the Jedi who's closest to his.
Yeah.
And then you also have Cody.
Oh,
Cody.
all the clones. Yeah,
It
that's
just
tragedy of them.
yeah. And at that point, we didn't know about the chips.
We didn't. No, we
So
just
when it
assumed.
first came out, we were just like, oh wow, they really are good at taking orders.
Mm-hmm. Too well. Too well.
Yep.
It's funny you bring up Plo Koon because my brother-in-law is doing a rewatch canonically for the first time. He frankly really never watched Star Wars with an intrinsic eye. So let's just say for all intents and purposes, he doesn't know what happens. And he's midway through the Clone Wars right now, and he's obviously, because Filoni is a big Plo Koon fan, he's been like, "Wow, this Plo Koon guy is awesome. He's great. he's in a lot of scenes. I hope he has a bigger role in Star Wars throughout the rest of this. And I'm like, I'm not spoiling it for you, but you got a dark future ahead of you with that character if he's one of your favorites right now.
Yeah.
don't get your hopes up.
Don't get attached.
Don't get attached, or maybe get attached, and then it's more of a
And
heartbreaking
then it hurts
revelatory
more.
moment, right? Yeah, it's gonna hurt. Um, I love uh I love that opening sequence. That whole cold open is
It's so good.
spectacular. The drums just opening it up, just like dun dun, is such a phenomenal way to start the movie, especially the way that the Tartakovsky Clone Wars ends, which for so long was I watched those two volumes and then start Revenge of the Sith,
Yep.
which ends with the space battle, and then it's like a perfect segue right into it. And yeah, just seeing Anakin Obi-Wan, their banter, you hear the kind of the Force theme play. It's the first thing that musically plays. It's so awesome. I love one of my favorite moments is when like the two ships go beside each other, and it's like a pirate ship shooting their guns at each other, but in space, and showcasing that these are actually like actual space ships, which I'm sure you've ridden Rise of the Resistance at one point where the cannons worked, which is like my white whale, my holy grail, if you will. Like I
I
keep telling
think
people,
I only wrote it once when it was like that.
I'm like, they used to move. They
Yeah, I
did.
tried to be like, I'm not crazy, right?
There's a
Like
reason they stop
after
and go.
lockdown. Yeah, I was like,
They did this once, guys. Believe me. I'm
yeah,
not
I'm not
crazy. I'm
crazy.
not
I'm
man
making
yelling
it
at
up.
cloud. Love that sequence. I think I do love the hello there. I always catches me off guard sometimes, and then sometimes I don't. I'm like, I always respond with General Kenobi. Um,
Yep.
Now that Clone Wars is fully complete, the General Grievous, you are taller than I expected line hits so much harder because they had to avoid having them meet, which was like,
Oh, it was so funny. He was just next door. Like Ahsoka is
you just missed
14
him.
and fighting
Yeah,
him.
he was right
And you're
there.
like, Anakin, no, didn't see him.
He can't meet, you know?
Nope.
When they're like, "Oh, the ray shields, we're smarter than this," and he's like, "Apparently not."
Nope.
Love all that, and just like some of those hidden beats that just like are so much more fruitful throughout the movie, like um, Anakin being like, "His fate will be the same as ours." And it's like, "Yeah, you're all gonna die on a Death Star one day. Like, you literally will have the same fate, all of you." Uh, that's so
And
great.
Obi-Wan saying you're gonna no, that's
You're gonna be
the
the death
Attack
of
of the
me.
Clones saying.
Yeah, also
That's
true
Attack of the
too.
Clones. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, one day. Give it time, guys.
Yeah.
Um, and just like all the machinations of the seduction of Anakin Skywalker is just so brilliantly well done. Ian McDermott is top dog when it comes to
Oh,
this.
he's having a grand
He
time and it
absolutely is.
shows.
Like the unlimited power, finally being able to unleash himself and his true self to the galaxy and not have to hide himself. Now, here's a question that I always like to speculate on: is was Palpatine the face, like this the Chancellor? Was that like a mask that he had on in some way? Like, what is the real face of Emperor Palpatine? Is it the when the lightning hits him and he becomes what we know as the Emperor? Like, is that the real face unmasked for everybody to see, or is it like the guy that was like hiding, pretending to be this politician that loves democracy and all that?
Oh, I don't know.
I'll let you marinate on that. That's a
Yeah.
speculative one.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I know I thrust that on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I always figured he was like I like the idea that the Sith can look like non-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to
Mm.
look scary.
Mm. Yeah.
They can look like a grandpa,
Sure.
just all nice and and then he can change
Unlimited
because I feel
power.
like
You know, he
yeah,
just gets to rock.
which you kind of see that with like Chimere and
Yeah.
Acolyte
Yeah.
is pretty face and then scary mask.
Scary. One of the scariest masks. I tell you. Oof. That thing is terrifying. Nightmare fuel in some ways. Um. Yeah. That whole the I think scholars have written at length about how awesome the Plagueis story is and how pivotal that is to the Star Wars machinations of the seduction of Anakin Skywalker. But I will add to that chorus again of how awesome it is, right? uh, but I will also add, as a member of society, And to the listeners at home, I'm sorry if I get a little political here, but this is I think the point that George is trying to make here is that when people offer easy solutions to complicated problems, there's a problem in that. Like, there's a reason issues are complicated and they take time and they're difficult to quickly be addressed and assessed, versus Palpatine coming in there and he says, like, oh, I'll save your wife, I know the tools. Like, oh, have you ever heard this legend? She'll die a certain death, he says, right? He knows the right words and things to say to Anakin. And then finally, when he says, like, I'll pledge myself to your teachings, he's like, well, to cheat death is a power that only one person has done, but I'm sure if we do this, like, if we work together, we'll get it. So then he's already he lied
Yep,
to him
he's
from
already
the start.
he's
He's
all
already letting him go. Like, and then he's like, if you do this, go to the temple and take out all the Jedi, then you'll be strong enough in the dark side of the Force that we can figure this out. And it's just
moving
always
the goalpost.
moving the goalposts. That's right. It's
Yeah.
always never getting to the answer that he ultimately needs. And then, like, I think you and I both agree there's some like, yeah, I'm not gonna let Padme live. I need this guy fully untethered here. And then we see that kind of in Kenobi too, where he's like, are your feelings on this clear, Lord Vader? I feel like you're not really attached to my hip anymore. Plays that game again, and that's that toxic relationship of the two of them here that only gets fermented in this moment.
Also, we're seeing this again and in real life, is that people are willing to be subjugated after going through so much.
Also another fair point.
And just like, and that's the thing, is like, it's brilliant what Palpatine does. He's playing both sides. He's playing a war just to get people so exhausted that they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, Emperor. If it means the war ends, sure.
I brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
Yep.
Your new empire?
Padme, he told you everything on your first date.
He literally, when you're, hanging around with butt cows, and he's like, well, people should be forced to do what they need to do. Oh, Anakin.
By who, you?
Oh, Anakin.
Also, and then your next date, when he went to meet his family, he killed a bunch of women and children also. So, oh, Padme.
And then tells
Padme,
you
the red flags. Yep. And he's, and you're like, we should get married.
And then she's like, oh, Anakin, it's okay. We should go. Yeah, we should get married. I truly, madly, lovely.
2 days later. Yeah.
2 days
a day later.
Oh man, what a comedy of errors between the two of them. Very dangerous putting them together.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be the downfall of the Jedi Order. Oh well, it happens.
And also, the downfall of the Sith, because without Luke,
hey, Anakin is the chosen one. He brings balance to the Force in some way. Just prophecy misread.
Prophecy just didn't say how.
It's funny that they always say, like, a prophecy misread, or at least Yoda says that, and I'm like, no, I think it was prophecy read, just misunderstood. Like, misread implies that, like, you miss a few words here, which I don't think they missed words. I just think that they thought, it'll destroy the Sith, but not just the Jedi too.
Yeah, like they got a bad translation or something.
Yeah, I don't know if they've canonically in new canon actually wrote out what this chosen one prophecy is yet. I'd be intrigued if they have, but maybe one day. I don't know if they want to touch that. To be honest, I think might want to leave that to mystery. But
make it ambiguous.
Yeah, but maybe in the next 50 years when they're like, we need to do something. Disney's like, you must bring us investment here. We need more stories in this. They'll figure out some way to get that thing up and running here. The whole sequence is, I do love the way Hayden plays, like, what have I done? Just the realization of, like, holy cow, there's no going back from this here. Like, I done this. Yeah, like you said, they're not going to welcome you back with open arms. They already are like, I don't trust them. They literally say that in this movie. Like, come on, guys. No one trusts Anakin. And the only guy that actually gives him the light of day to somewhat in this movie is the guy that's the greatest Sith Lord in the galaxy.
Yeah. Yeah, as a kid, I was like, oh, Mace Windu's being so unfair to him. And then as an adult, I'm like, Mace was right.
Yeah.
Mace was completely right.
He was.
I mean, look what he did.
It didn't work out. Didn't work out well for him. He knows firsthand. Oh. Yeah, doesn't have one. Only has one.
Now he has none.
Now he has none. Well, Yeah, unless he comes back in somehow. That's one of the things where I'm like, I hope they let that be, but you know, I'll let the creators
Put
create.
Samuel L. Jackson back.
Yeah,
Come on.
I'm sure I can be swayed over easily, but I do appreciate that. Like, this is like the true Anakin. Like, oh, I can't go back from this moment. I have to
Yeah.
go further into this, which I think makes that scene where Anakin has like the tear going down his eye, like his cheek, when he's like brooding on Mustafar. I think that just makes that all the more tragic. Like, it
Yeah.
just hits a little harder because of that. Um, yeah, Revenge of Sith, great movie, a lot of great stuff in this thing.
Hmm.
I'm sure it's not just 20 years that we'll be chatting about this, but we'll be chatting about it 40 years, 50 years, God willing, 250 plus years from now, people will still be chatting about the goodness of Revenge of the Sith. Candace, do you have any further last thoughts on Revenge of the Sith before we close out here?
No, I think we covered it
I think
all.
we dissected this film pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Well, where can the folks find you and the Geeky Waffle online if they want to continue the conversation or just hear some of the cool stuff you got going on?
Yeah, we'll be at the geekywaffle.com. Since it's coming out in 2 weeks. We'll be at Star Wars Celebration.
Ooh,
Sunday, we will be on the HoloNet stage,
for
which
real. Congrats.
we're very excited about. I think it's 12:30 p.m. We're going to be talking about the Jedi and the perception the galaxy has on the Jedi. So,
That is awesome. Wow. What an excellent panel. What a great, well, I don't know panel, but conversation. What a great topic. I'm sure you're doing a lot of great, research. Oh no, you have to watch
I
Star
mean,
Wars to
Revenge of
prepare
the
for this.
Sith, yeah, Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars are very big on how like the galaxy goes from okay, yeah, Jedi's are heroes, like in the High Republic, and
Yeah,
then they're like, oh
and now
no,
they're none.
no. And Palpatine's like, yeah, they're the enemy, and everyone's like, yep,
Very
yep,
quickly.
we
Yep.
agree,
The Jedi were the
totally believe
problem.
it.
The Jedi were the
No
problem.
evidence needed.
The
We
attack on my
believe you.
life is that's all
Yep.
you need is to see me in this state here. Crazy. Well, that is awesome. Congrats on that. And not only just a celebration, but a celebration in a completely different country and continent. Like, you're going to Japan. That's so cool.
Yeah. We did London, and we talked about Padme.
Nice.
So,
Perfect. And now you're
of course.
just expanding it out to the Jedi now. And what a
Yep.
great place. Like, I'm so jealous of everybody that's going out to Japan to celebrate Star Wars. I think, a place that like was the inspiration for the storytelling that has taken place in this saga is Japan itself, with all the Kurosawa films and other samurai films that George
Hmm.
loved growing up. So I can't think of a better place. And that sounds like an excellent panel. Are you guys perhaps going to be recording the audio
Yes.
content to then be released later?
Yes. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, folks, be on the lookout for that. Of course, go check out Geeky Waffle, and then follow all the fun things that they're doing. And I'm sure you'll be posting from Japan and all the hopefully
Yes.
crazy announcements that they've got planned over that 3 days. Who knows what they got in store for us over there, and then Andor season, and who knows what's coming out after
We
that.
got
Then,
Ahsoka season 2.
yeah,
There's a animation panel, which we're hoping that there's going to be an announcement, maybe
there
of
better
something
be an
new there.
announcement, because they kind of teased at D23 that something's happening, but
Yeah.
didn't actually happen. So, anywho, well, Candace, thank you so much for joining us for this episode celebrating 20 years of Revenge of the Sith. We'll certainly have you back on in some way, shape, or form to chat about Star Wars in the future here. And folks listening at home, thank you so much for joining us on this first installment of Revenge of the Sith celebration ceremonies, in a way. We're going to be doing many more of these over the next couple of weeks here, bringing on a variety of different guests to share their experiences in the galaxy far, far away, and particularly with this film. So be on the lookout for more of those episodes in the near future here. So until then, folks, may the Force be with you, and take care.